Good morning, traders, and a very happy Wednesday out there to you all. Hope that everyone had a nice evening there, and should be a rather interesting day in front of us. And right before we go diving into the charts, just a few items on the calendar to be aware of here today. For starters, we'll have our core retail sales due out at 8:30 Eastern Time, and then really outside of that, we have a couple Fed speakers at 9 o'clock and housing market index at 10 o'clock. So a couple of smaller figures, as the day progresses on, but we do have at 8:30 there the core retail sales, so we will want to make note of that. And then you got the beige book later on in the day at 2 o'clock there as well. So just a few things to be aware of before we kick off and start to look at these daily charts in particular here with our S&P. So we had a little pickup in activity in the Globex session. Our Globex high 4800.75, Globex low 4768.75. So couple things here. For one, at least we were able to trade on the other side of that bar from Thursday, since we had been sitting inside of it for the past two trading days. So we did give it a good test at the time. Our low from Thursday lined right up with our daily EMA, so we were able to test slightly beneath both of them. And now currently, it will be good to have it on the sheets today. 47.79.50 there. Previous day's low would still be worth keeping tabs on there. So as far as the daily configuration goes, as we know, we failed to make the full retest up, and now we're just playing around the inside pocket area, but like we said, daily EMAs in this vicinity as well, alongside with that low from Thursday. So as far as our data points go, if we end up dropping back beneath the 47.72.75, that wouldn't be a very constructive look, for the ES. And then on the flip side of the coin, we'll have some previous days low to take into account there in case we see any rotation around that point. But that's where we are on the daily display. On the intraday, 120 minute or 240, fairly similar zones, to take into account. We had two data points down there at the 67.50 mark, so once again very close to that Thursday low there. So we did come down, kind of gave it a bit of a retest, but viewing that as being a bit of a caution zone, since we now have tested it for a third time, the 67.50 zone. We only got down to 68.75 overnight, but as we could see, tail zone, and that's also right above where we have these nice impulse bars, these three nice impulse bars on the 240 minute display. So coming back beneath that, just being aware of the fact that we do have some structural work that could be done. But for now, they're doing all right, trying to maintain and hold their ground. And then as we come down to the slightly lower time frames, we can see we're not necessarily forming major buy divergences or anything as of yet. So we'll still be going through a bit of a testing phase. So it'll give us some nice activity to watch, seeing what type of movement we get off of that, pit session opening, our first 15 minutes, etc. So that's where we are with the ES, just including a couple more data points there so we can get back to our normal scaling. And then moving on along outside of our ES, we also have the DAX to take into account here. This one almost reminds us a little more of like that Russell future, right? Getting down beneath that previous 2 weeks low and kind of maintaining and holding themselves down there. So as far as the DAX goes, we had the 16,584 there as the previous 2 weeks low, if you would, and reminds us of this broad market, right? The small cap, the nature in which we're kind of just breaking down from this sideways line that we had built out, or this price bar overlap. So some mild similarities between those two as a group. But here with the DAX, if we do indeed keep some work here beneath the 16,584, it could still set the stage for, being under some better pressure, if you would, giving better range expansion. The other item to consider is the fact that we had our little movement there from the 15th, right? So that was our kind of quasi little holiday mode. So that bar is not really super substantial. But if we look at the action from yesterday, it still gives us that feeling of breaking down from balance. So nice to see him at least on the other side of the 16,584, but still should serve as a good point of interest for us to monitor there in the case of the DAX. Lighter time frames here, not really showcasing a major loss of momentum or buy divergences. We're essentially trading by going a sideways as opposed to doing much lifting since we had all this damage done from the Asia session, and has been a little bit more on the rotational side here into that Europe session morning. So that's where we are landing there with our DAX, and then we have some of these other groups, including the currencies here. EC being a fairly good range expansion down yesterday out of the 3 bars of balance, so also technically sound, in other words, getting the trade on the other side of the previous day's low, the 1.08895. So we were able to get some follow through from the range expansion bar yesterday. Going back to the 240-minute display, we did some mild work into this big impulse bar still. So we have that going for us, and then as we come down slightly lighter time frames here, such as like the 120-minute view, right? Good impulse down. This was our little consolidation we had before the close, and then we proceeded to make the lower low. So we do have some mild hint of loss of momentum here. It's just a matter that they haven't necessarily lifted too much, and we're breaking down from this sideways line. So as opposed to really giving major reactions up off the 120-minute display, we've essentially been consolidating, kind of going sideways and failing to fully revert back there towards that mean. So we'll keep an eye on this 1.08825 as being more of a caution zone there should we make a lower low. And then on the flip side of the coin, really 1.09080 there in case we were to come back up above that. That would give us the feeling of a little divergence kicking in which case that 120-minute moving average would serve quite well. But for now, stuck between a rock and a hard place. Already made the lower low overnight, so all we're doing is some consolidation down at the lower end of yesterday's daily bar there as far as the euro currency goes. But not bad. Certainly has got some pretty decent rhythm for it going there overnight. And then we have our gold here, the GC. Also, gave a decent range expansion bar down there yesterday. So also like the EC, we got a fairly good degree of follow through. Not quite enough to take out that previous tail that we had in the gold. That's down there at 2017.3. So managed to keep themselves up above that point, but still, good range expansion down, like the EC. So we were able to get the follow through trade beneath the previous day's low, and now we're coming back to this price bar overlap zone. We can mark off the 2017, of course, since that's going to be a visible tail, but when we come over here to our intraday charts, we'll see the posturing here on the oscillator already having given that divergence feeling, as well as just the lower lows in price and the higher lows in the oscillator into previous testing areas. But the thing with the gold is we're still down 2 points, but we've had this counter-reactive lift already unfolding overnight, kind of working off this hourly buy divergence. Or if you jump out to the 120-minute view, you can kind of see that rhythm there as well. So what we can keep an eye out for on the gold here today is that we've had the divergence reaction up off the lows. So as we come back, if we come back at all, would really want to see if we're able to hold any type of higher low here in the structure with the gold, since we've just had impulse down and all this has been is a counter reactive lift. So we haven't really had that nice established higher low type of feeling to help regain some better footing. So that'll be an item on the queue to keep an eye on for today, seeing if the gold is able to put in any type of higher low up against, really using this low that we made. Here we are down here at 2020.5. So if we were to come back down, perhaps putting in any type of higher low or holding around that point would likely generate some interest there for that of the gold. But not too bad. Nice and active there in the overnight session. So should be a worthwhile candidate to keep an eye on there. And then we have the crude here. Crude finally getting itself a little better escaped from its price bar overlap that it's been having. However, as we know, we've been going through more of a bracketing market or rotational phase, in that the upper and lower ends of the ranges have been met with fading activity. But in today's case, we're reaching down in the crude fairly well. We have like windows here, so 71.44, 71.06. We did a pretty good job of getting beneath both of those. So any further down here in the crude, we have a little blue box area here from when we had a little bit more of a deeper excursion. So here with the crude, if we look over here to the far left hand side, even though we're beneath the 71.06, we have this previous tiny congestion zone that we can also still consider there for the crude. So for now, good movement outside the range. We'll keep an eye. You could probably hit this with a nice color here. If we keep the price beneath the 71.06, could set the stage for some better work closer towards that lower box area. But for now, just because the tone as of late has been, pushed down and then back up, vice versa, for quite some while. So in today's case, as we're pushing down, if we start to actually hold and maintain our traction, we could make a case that we actually are able to get outside of this previous range here. So we'll take it one step at a time, though. We really want to see the market prove itself, which so far it's been doing all right, putting in some range expansion down there. So beneath 71.06, crude will still be under a little bit of pressure there, and the data has been pushed back to tomorrow there since we had the holiday on Monday. And then our last but not least here with that of the bonds. The bonds also giving that range expansion almost like the euro currency, right? Good range expansion bar down, out of balance. We have 120.27 there as the previous day's low, which we have not quite tested here in the Globex session as of yet with those bonds. So definitely want to keep an eye on that area, coupled with the fact here previous reaction highs on the daily charts, 120.25 from the data points here on December 7th that we have. So when we take the same bond chart here and blow it up here, maybe perhaps a 240-minute display, we'll include a couple more data points just so we can see that 120.25 and a tad more detail there, so we can latch onto that and see that it's a good point of interest. So looking over here, previous reaction highs, and is also the bottom of some of this lower developed area from our rapid impulse to the upside that we had through that zone. So as far as where we're sitting here currently, just holding briefly above previous reaction highs. So as far as the bonds go, not half bad. They're at an interesting location there, so ones to keep an eye on. And with that said, we'll dial it back here for a few moments because we have our morning data points, so we'll want to let that settle in and see just as to what we have lining up for this nice day in front of us. We have a couple interesting technicals to be aware of there today, so a couple of these hourly and 120-minute charts should serve us fairly well out there. So let's get this morning data point out of the way and see what we have lining up for this nice Wednesday here in front of us.